Hi, my name is Napio Shali. If this is your first time, welcome to the channel. If it's not your first time, welcome back and let's talk. So today I have a friend of mine. His name is Mark Madaba. We're gonna be talking about mental health, my favorite thing to talk about. But Mark is a clinical psychologist. Okay, I'm gonna let him introduce himself. Mark, please introduce yourself.
All right. Hello, my name is Mark Madaba, as Napra mentioned. Yes, I work as a clinical psychologist, or I prefer to call myself a therapist, and I've been doing it now for 3 years, going into my 4th year at the Kongwari Psychotherapeutic Center. So that's the gist of it. All the way in the bush.
In the bush. Okay, but Mark is like literally, in my opinion, out here saving lives. So I wanted to ask Mark a couple of questions because, or have this conversation with Mark because I talk about mental health a lot. I talk about therapy a lot. And this is somebody who's actually on the ground, like working on this stuff, like actually doing the day-to-day work. So I thought it would be a good idea for us to have a conversation with him and get his opinion on things and like really have some clarity, because a lot of my posts, if you read the blog dapioshalirice.com, or if you've watched this channel before, you'll see a lot of it is basically go to therapy, but like what happens then? And Mark is here to answer the question, what happens then? So I took down some notes because I wouldn't get too excited and like completely forget. So let's start with Mark. Why did you decide to pursue this career in this particular field?
Okay. Well, that's a very interesting question. I keep getting asked, but actually psychology found me initially.
Okay.
I chose it. Yeah, I actually chose it as a subject, my BA. And then eventually, actually, I began to understand myself a lot more. So I was like, this is pretty dope, actually. And one of the things I always wanted to do was to help people. So I think I actually then realized I wanted to become a helping professional, which we tend to call ourselves the helping profession. And that's how I eventually found myself. After my BA, I did a single major in psychology. Then I ended up doing my master's in clinical psychology. So yeah, basically, it found me. And then eventually I realized this is where I was meant to be.
I think the term helping, I've never heard that, helping professional. That's so beautiful. Okay. What, like, is that coined across like all sorts of therapy, psychologists, social workers? Is that something that like runs across, or what is a helping professional?
I think the best way you can put it is if you as the individual are the instrument that you use, because most times doctors, they give you diagnosis and all of that. If you yourself, like a psychologist, if you use yourself as the instrument in the therapy, then you're a helping professional. That's the best way I can actually
you yourself as the individual are the instrument. That's so cool.
Exactly.
Okay, I learned something new. Okay, so let's start with, okay, so a lot of the stuff that I write, obviously, is like go get help, go get help. Here are the places you can get help. And I think I'll plug below, like there's a blog, there's a post that I did with different places where you can get help. Okongwari being one of them. But okay, so let's say I have a diagnosis, right? What now? What is the next step? Like, what do I then say? What are the different options for me for treatment? Let's say that. What are the different options for treatment based on different like diagnoses and like severity of different cases?
Okay, I think usually the first part when you get the diagnosis, I'm guessing you got it either from a medical doctor, maybe from a psychologist.
Not self-internet diagnosis, like like an actual diagnosis from an actual medical professional.
Yeah, okay. In most cases, I think the first line of treatment that I've noticed is I think they sometimes put you on medication, antidepressants, depending on the diagnosis. Antidepressants will be for your depression. Then they give you sometimes medication to help you with the anxiety. Then I think from that first line of treatment, then comes what they call talk therapy, psychotherapy.
Okay.
Where we basically come in. So you as the individual, you're sitting now like, oh shoot, I got a diagnosis now. I may be depressed. I may be anxious. Maybe I have trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder. Maybe there's a range of them. Maybe I've not been told I'm OCD, So what tends to happen then, you have all of these questions and sometimes you really don't know what's happening. Maybe you've been describing a problem and then somebody gives you a word for it now. So what tends to happen now is to get information about it.
Okay.
So that's maybe the next step for you to understand it properly. And that's where most of the times we come in, the psychologists as well. So then just to get information, I think it's always wise from the first step. If it's the medication you've been given, then inform yourself, get information, understand it. How did I get here, basically? That should be the first step, yeah.
Okay, so the first step is always medication? Because
not always. I think that's why I said it's the
I'm asking this because there's so many cases where like people get medication and they don't react well to it, obviously, as you know, or like, so is the first step always like medication? Is not like maybe change your lifestyle? I don't know, like why I feel like, or maybe some psychotherapy, because I'm afraid to like scare people off with this, like, hey, if you go to a therapist, the first thing they're going to do is medicate you, because a lot of people are obviously afraid of that. Yeah, so maybe my question is more, there's medication, there's psychotherapy. I think there's like, from what I have experienced, is like lifestyle changes and all of that.
Yeah.
There is no umbrella, right, for everybody. Everybody's different.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And I think that's why it's very important. That's why I initially asked, when you get a diagnosis, who did you get it from?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the times what I've noticed here is the first line is always they try to put you on medication. The first line. Right. So a lot of the times, if you maybe see a psychologist, they will do talk therapy with you. If you see a psychiatrist, for instance, like you're a psychiatrist who's basically a medical doctor and who did psychology, then they'll try to put you on medication because that's how basically they're trained. But the first line is, and depending on who you see, the medication, and then the psychotherapy, the talk therapy. Basically, also the person needs to understand. Talk therapy, we need to understand what's going on before we can recommend any lifestyle changes, any like ways to cope with it. Because I think also you need to learn how to cope with the mental illness. Yeah.
So you mentioned something, I guess I'm digressing a little bit, but you mentioned something about self-education. Like, okay, so I've got this diagnosis. This is what a medical professional has told me is the problem, right? Or what I'm battling or whatever. And I need to educate myself. What is the best way to go about that?
Firstly, understand how you got there.
Okay.
That's, I think, the very first thing. What led me to this point? Then, how do I cope with this thing? So, if I can use an example, because I'm very much an example person, visualizing things. So let's say now you've been told you are suffering from depression, right? And then you're like, what the hell is depression? Does that mean I'm just going to be sad the whole time? I'm just going to be in bed, which is usually the typical symptoms. Those are the symptoms of depression. So then to educate yourself, it's like, what makes me feel like this? Why am I always feeling like this? And then that's where your talk therapy comes in. Okay, tell me about yourself, your background, your lifestyle, how is it? And then from there, we begin to empower you as well, giving you this information of, okay, maybe it's because, for instance, you have the wrong environment, the people you surround yourself with. So then that's basically what I mean by self-educating. Like we begin to empower you with that.
Okay.
Now we're moving on to the coping.
Yeah. So, okay, so obviously I'm always talking about this stuff, right? And I get a lot of like interesting reactions, like, oh, are you depressed? Are you crazy? Are you whatever? And then every once in a while, I get like things like, that stuff doesn't work, right? But you're in this profession. So my question to you is, I'm hoping you're going to say yes, is do you think actually getting help works? But also to the, like, I guess there are levels to what we mean by work, right? So maybe if you're depressed, I think there are ways that you can deal with different, like based on like its source. You talk about the source, right? Like, is it hereditary? Was it triggered by something in particular? Okay. And then there are more serious mental health issues like schizophrenia, etc., etc. So in your career, do you feel like you can say that every day when you go to sleep, you're like, okay, I'm making a difference? Or are we just like sort of wasting our time with this stuff?
Wow. It works, Ndabdewa. I mean, it's evidence-based. It's evidence-based. So everything we do, or everything that I do, is evidence. based, So it works, but I
Yeah.
think the only person who determines if it's gonna work is the client. You have to buy into it. So I can sit here and I give you all of these wonderful tools, tell you do this, but if you don't buy into it, if you don't have that belief, also that hope that this is going to help me, then the end of the day, then it won't work if you don't believe it will. Yeah.
I actually want to ask, to just then follow up on that, right? So I don't know where it was that I read it many, many years ago, that your relationship with your therapist is the same as any other relationship. You have to find a good therapist that fits you, and you fit them and you understand them. And I want to give a very practical example. So black tax, right? So I'm drowning under the stress of black tax. Should I go to a white therapist to explain this problem? Because they don't have the same sort of understanding of the situation. Yeah. Or would you recommend okay, maybe it's better to go to a woman therapist if you're dealing with some particular issues, or a male therapist if you're male and you're dealing with some, what do you think about that? Matching your therapist to your particular lifestyle or life experiences.
Okay. Can I take you back to something you said at the beginning of this? The relationship you have with your therapist is very important. I think that's what determines actually at the end of the day the success of therapy. How's the relationship with your therapist? So if you feel like this white person, what does he know about black tax? Obviously that's going to affect what's going to come out of it. So I think if you say the matching, as you put it, that's a very important thing. You have to also be able to match with the therapist. You need to be able to understand that this person at least gets it. They understand my context, they understand where I'm coming from. And then that actually plays a huge role. You need that match. So if you're not gelling well with a therapist, it's also important to let them know, hey, bro, I don't think you know what I'm talking about. Or you don't know.
You don't get it.
The thing is, you don't get it. And that's fine, because also the way we are trained, we also should also for on our end, if we also get the feeling that maybe this relationship, it's not therapeutic, as we call it, let me always refer you to somebody else.
Oh, okay.
Because that's a very important thing. That relationship is actually what makes the therapy. It actually accounts for about, if not more than 40% of the success of the therapy.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, because I also want to just fall on one last example, right? So I'm Christian.
Yeah.
And I'm telling this my therapist who's agnostic or atheist or whatever. These things that I'm these are things that are truly tormenting my soul, and they're like, what is that? So I think also it must be, I've seen some people actually ask hey, does anybody have any black therapists, contacts for black therapists? Does anybody have any contacts for Christian therapists or Muslim therapists or agnostic therapists? Because I think as humans we tend to a little bit impose our ideologies on people, right? So for example, if I'm a Christian therapist and I'm not Christian, and they tell me I need to go pray or something, it's or I'm not religious and they tell me you need to go pray, it's so I think it's just I've been thinking about that. Do you agree it would be better to go with somebody who's within your same religion, or at least some sort of basic beliefs and norms and practices?
It will make it easier, yes, to express yourself to them. But I think one thing I should also mention, Napewa, I think one thing that also facilitates the therapy is there's an element of non-judgmental. The person you're talking to shouldn't judge you in any way. So I could be, for instance, a Muslim and you're a Christian and you're talking to me and you're telling me about the Christian belief. I have to put my belief also a bit in the back, because it's it's not about me. It's actually about you. So I have to put that as well in the therapy as well. But from your end, if you feel like I would feel more comfortable speaking to a Christian, go ahead, you can do that. But the way we're trained, we're not going to put our own stuff in there. We won't impose. So there's also non-judgmental. We have to also be warm. That's one of the basic components of therapy. And also positive good regard, as I call it, unconditional positive good regard. So what we basically, I'm a person-centered therapist. I should actually mention that. So I believe that if you come to me, right, you have the answers to your situation. And my job is to
Yeah.
actually bring those answers out. So if you're a Muslim, I should use the
Yeah.
context of a Muslim,
Okay.
But if I don't get it, I'll be like, yo, man, I have this friend who's a Muslim therapist.
Like,
Maybe you
let me
should
give
go
you
for
his
it with
number
him.
so you can go call him and see what he's
Exactly.
saying.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's actually really good because I'm trying to obviously do this channel for a purpose, right? And I'm trying to get people to get
Yeah.
like in touch with certain things and understand themselves and understand others. And I think what you said is like really, really important, but also really like bring some clarity as to a lot of the questions that I couldn't answer, like, does therapy really work? You're wasting my time. And there's someone who told me once, maybe just to close off, that told me like, yeah, you can't fix broken people. So yeah, I want to know what like your your opinion of that is, because I think a lot of people think like, I saw a post very, very long ago that says broken crayons still color, right? And I'm a true believer in the fact that, or I have the opinion that you can always be a better version of yourself. You can always heal. You can always grow, right? If you're teachable, as long as you're teachable. Some people ain't teachable. Okay, whatever. But like, if you're teachable and you're willing to grow, like you can always be a better version of yourself. So, what do you say about that? About, once someone is broken, that's it. That's just how they are, and you must accept them for that.
That's a very good excuse to continue maybe toxic behavior.
Yeah.
Look, I think when you say broken people can be fixed,
Mhm.
okay, so they can be fixed. But you know what you can do? Broken pieces, you can always arrange them in a way that you want them to be.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that it's not fixable.
Wait, that was really deep. You can always arrange them in the way. Hey, okay, Mark, go ahead then.
No, but honestly, man, it's like I think when people always come like in the session and they say, I feel so broken, or I've lost the touch of myself,
Yeah.
It's like, okay, then I think if you're broken, then how can we rearrange the pieces? Because I mean, you still have the pieces are there. If you're broken, it means the pieces are maybe now cracked and all of that. So
Yeah.
how do you rebuild it? So maybe to answer to that person, it's possible, but hey, maybe he needs to go see therapist.
Maybe he or she needs to go see some therapy. Yeah, because I'm getting a lot. It's actually quite a lot that, like, because I'm always posting the stuff on social media and people are like, you're wasting your time. And of course, I get a lot of positive feedback and a lot of positive, like, thank you. And I've gotten some therapy and I'm going to therapy now, started therapy, etc., etc. But there's always that. So I guess maybe let me ask you, what are your final words with regards to therapy, with regards to your profession? What would you say to somebody? What would you want to leave, like a lasting impression that you'd want to leave with somebody who is watching this video and in particular is on the fence about going to therapy?
Now you put me on the spot, no. No, man, what lasting impressions? I think always like therapy is just, if you're always on the fence, always see it as getting to understand yourself better. Or a better way of putting it is therapy is becoming you at the end of the day. It's maybe you might not get the answer, but you'll be a person who can actually be able to find that answer yourself.
Yeah.
When we don't know the answers, we don't always know the answers, but we can help you get to a stage where you can say, but actually, I think I get it now.
Yeah.
So I think if you have any fear of therapy, just remember that, but it's going to help me become myself.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, that's what anybody wants to be.
Yeah.
When it comes to change or anything like that. So,
and I just want to add to that. That's really my idea and my understanding as well. And I want to add to that, like recently we had dinner with some of our friends, and one of the things that I said is, I don't go to therapy that much anymore. I talk about it a lot, but I hardly go anymore, and I haven't gone in a couple of years actually. And because what happened is my therapist gave me the tools to understand myself and the things that I do. And with those tools, like actual mental tools, physical tools, even like go work out, girl, and eat some healthy food. They gave me the tools to be to better analyze why I do certain things and evaluate as to whether they're healthy or not and how I can be better. So like if I'm triggered by something, I have the tool to like identify what that trigger is, why I'm so upset or why I'm so whatever I feel or whatever way I do about something, and then like act accordingly. So yeah, so that's it. That's my opinion. Okay, so thank you so much, Mark, for doing this with me. I really, really appreciate it. Like, I'm so happy when my friends agree to do these things, because I think you guys are like a well of knowledge. And I'm so grateful that you guys agreed to this. And I particularly am grateful for you for doing this with me today, because these are questions that really have come up a lot. Like, okay, so I go to therapy and then what? So yeah, thank you. So if you're watching this, if you got to the end of this video, congratulations, your life is now better. I don't know, but like, if you got to the end of this video, please like, subscribe, and we'll see you later. Ciao, Mark.
Bye.